Hello, everyone, and welcome to another segment of, what do we call this? Lore You Should Know. We haven't done these in about a month or so.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's back in the swing of things with 2018. And with this segment, we talk about little bits of Dungeons & Dragons lore and how you can use it in your game and or just for your fun and edification, really. And today we're going to talk about Modrons.
Indeed.
Which are a very fun little... I guess a race is how we would define them in Dungeons & Dragons.
More or less.
But they're very different than many other D&D creatures.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
They certainly bring the fun.
They do. So what are they in a nutshell then, Matt? Oh, yeah, I should introduce you guys. I'm joined by Matt Cernit.
Hello.
And Chris Perkins.
Hi there.
Hey, guys. I've forgotten how to do this. It's been like a whole new calendar and everything changes. So what are Modrons all about?
So in the Great Wheel cosmology, where there's all the different planes that represent various alignments and so on, Modrons are on the most lawful neutral plane. They are the sort of embodiments of law. And they are embodiments of a quirky version of law. So one of the things that I like to think about with Modrons is that they are they're lawful, not logical. So
set in their ways.
They're a very strange bunch of creatures. So they were first in the Fiend Folio, I believe.
Monster Manual 2.
Monster Manual 2. Ah, yeah. There we go. And they were weird, sort of geometrically shaped creatures. And some of them were not geometrically shaped. The sort of the higher orders of them were sort of had kind of weird statue human column shape thing bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are sort of two grades of Modrons. There's the lower order of Modrons, which sort of are just geometric shapes with legs, sometimes with wings. And then there are the Hierarchs, which are the ones that Matt's describing that tend to take on, they look less like common geometric forms and have weird protuberances and other odd.
I mean, there's one that kind of looks like it's a horizontally made fan with a cone head sticking out of it and 3 legs underneath and weird arms. They're very strange.
They're strange.
Yeah.
And it's because they're from the plane of law, which is Mechanus, is that right?
Yep.
That's right. Yep.
And when you say that they follow laws but not logic, what are the laws that they follow?
So they have kind of their own version of what laws are. So there's a couple different things. One is the various orders of Modrons can sort of only interpret so much information. And so like the lowest order of Modron can sort of understand how to do like one task and be given sort of a simple instruction. One
day I'll be promoted, and then I can do 2 tasks.
And then a higher order can do like 2, and then a few more. And you can go up the scale, and they get to sort of know more and understand more. And then beyond that sort of structure, or within that structure, I should say, there's a certain number of them. So there's so many thousands of this type, so many thousands of this type, so many hundreds of this type, until you get all the way up to the highest Modron, which is Primus. And anytime a Modron of higher order dies, a lower order Modron is elevated up into the higher order, and then they kind of shuffle up from there. So it's
a new lower level Monodrone comes off the assembly line.
Yeah. And it just sort of spontaneously happens. And then besides that weird set of laws that they follow in their own sort of weird way, there's the Great Modron March, which happens, I'm going to forget, it has a certain number of years that it happens between.
289.
There we go. And they wander around the Great Wheel and go in and out of the planes.
He's got the book in front of me.
Yeah, see, I don't have my computer in front of me. And they just do this thing. And so they're very quirky, strange creatures.
So what is the Modron March? What do they do?
They set out from Mechanus, and they begin a long parade through the cosmos, basically going through portals into other planes and kind of wandering the entire great wheel of the outer planes before making their way back home, and occasionally diverting into other places like worlds. So the Great Modron March could take them through Faerun at some point, and they continue this march, and it literally is a march. And it's not clear to most of the creatures who witness this march what the ultimate end goal is. It is just something that the Modrons do.
Right. Is it some sort of survey of things? Do they have to do this to establish law? Is it a culling of their numbers? Is it who?
Right.
It's just a bizarre internal logic that they have of their own.
Right. And Modrons, because they are so automated and follow this absolute strict regimen, which they never ever deviate from, except in the weirdest cases, which we can talk about when we talk about rogue Modrons.
Yeah.
This is not something that they get any enjoyment out of. They're just beholden to follow the one in front of them until such time as that one stops.
So there's an idea that Modrons all refer to themselves as we, and they just do as they're ordered by the higher Modrons, and so it is just this bizarre kind of hive mind mentality, and they just do what they do.
Are they, when you say hive mind, are they actually connected to each other and to a greater power?
The various higher low orders of Modrons and so on have powers of telepathy and stuff like that, and so they can communicate over sort of broad distances.
Yeah.
Okay.
The little guy doesn't know anything other than the order that's been given by his direct superior.
Got it.
So, and it's not even a question of faith that he follows the order; he simply does.
Yeah.
And
there's a weird idea too in some of the older lore. I'm not sure that we've gotten that far in 5th edition yet, where they can't actually understand the Modrons that are higher or 2 levels above them.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
They can only understand the Modrons that are a level below and a level above, and so like individually, that caste of Modron sort of exists in this universe where it's following the orders, and then all these other weird beings that they don't even necessarily identify as Modrons are, interacting in the world around them, but they're just doing what they're supposed to do because they're limited in their focus.
yeah.
So.
Are they androids? Are they made of metal? Are they bio people?
So there have been different artistic interpretations of them, and as far as I know, the lore hasn't gone into great detail about the inner working. Like, we haven't dissected a Modron and looked inside, but what we often see is a combination of biological and mechanical fused together. So in a way, they're sort of like cyborgs.
Interesting. With a single purpose to do whatever they're just told.
But there's, based on how they've looked in the past, they're not just pure machines. There's more going on there. Like their eyes are eyes, not shuttered metal things.
Yeah, and their original depictions, despite being like a geometric shape, like a long board, they were clearly meant to be fleshy. There was nothing mechanical about them, so it wasn't until 2nd edition that they started to look more sort of mechanical. And then in 3rd edition, they kind of didn't look like anything. And in 4th edition, they kind of didn't look like anything. So we brought them back for 5th, because it's a weird thing where in 3rd edition, they were kind of just basically left out of the game. I remember when I first came to work at Wizards about, 18 years ago or whatever now, they were putting together the monster manual. I was like, hey, you got to put the Modrons in. And everybody was like, no, we don't have to do that. Modrons are dumb.
Wow.
And I had a little campaign where I emailed people pictures of Modrons marching with sticks, and they had, save the Modrons. And it didn't work. Nobody cared. No one wanted to save the Modrons. So
that's what the parade is for. The parade is so that everyone, more D&D designers will put them in their game.
There are 2 camps when it comes to Modrons. There are people who adore them, and there are people who think they should be banished from all existence forever. But I'm firmly in the first camp, and they were the first creature that I had in mind to put in the outline for this monster manual, because I've always been enamored with them.
Nice. Well, that's cool.
So it's funny thing. They actually got mentioned in the 3rd edition manual of the planes, and then there was like an 18-page web edition for the book that detailed the Modrons.
Banished to the web.
But it was totally banished to the web. Nowhere else in the 3rd edition did they get any mention whatsoever, basically.
Oh my gosh.
So I maybe one like OP adventure or something like that.
Well, what was the? I find that interesting that they didn't appear in those editions. But what was it about their introduction in 1st edition and 2nd edition? Like, how were they used then? Like, how were they used in adventures?
They were tragically underused, or not used at all, really. They appeared in the 1st edition Monster Manual 2. I'll admit the art was a little dorky, and it made it hard to kind of love them. Like, they seemed to. The story was great behind them, but what you were looking at in the pictures didn't actually inspire you terribly.
So it's the art order problem.
The Modrons didn't really get much attention until the second edition Planescape adventure, The Great Modron March by Monty Cook, which focused on their trundling through the plains. And all what Monty did with that adventure was basically say that this event, this march, sets into motion a bunch of other things. Like it's sort of this lawful march triggers a series of chaotic events that the Modrons are basically blissfully unaware of.
Yeah, they're oblivious.
So the fact that they were,
it's
blindly following something.
It's like Y2K.
Right.
It was sort of like a precursor to that, a sense of panic that this strange thing is happening, which turns out to be completely harmless, but that doesn't stop people from freaking out and doing bad things.
Right. All the reactions to it were actually worse than the actual thing itself.
Yeah, because I mean, if you just let the Modrons go through, they'll just pass through.
Now, what's interesting is if the Modrons are on a march, and let's say it's been 289 years, and there's like a town now in the place where they used to march, based on their own internal set of logic, they've got to get through that town. How they do that to keep the march going might surprise you.
Does it surprise them? Are they capable of...
If like a guard stands in the way, the lead Modron might just hack the guard down.
Or, disassemble a building that's in the way.
Right, yes. Take apart a wall.
Rather than going through a door, it'll start taking it apart.
Exactly.
That's the easiest thing that I can think of
That's
how to do.
Exactly. That's how it perceives to be the way to continue on with its task.
Do they have emotions?
No, not really.
I wouldn't think so. No.
So they can't. They're not happy. They're not sad. They're not going to feel pleasure at doing anything.
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, there might be something more like a personality in a lot of the or some of the higher orders of Modrons that are like when you get really close to the leader, who is Primus is his name, its name I should say, because they're all its. And I mean they're certainly they're very intelligent when you get up into the higher orders when they're in charge of millions of other Modrons and stuff like that. But
now,
theoretically, because they're only
you mentioned Primus. What's the deal with Primus? Where did he come from, or it come from?
He was born out of the original. He was in the Monster Manual 2 along with all of the other Modrons and all the other Hierarch Modrons. He is a sort of a supernal being who lives on Mechanus, what was back then Nirvana. And he doesn't look like a Modron, really. He kind of looks like a humanoid-ish with energy coming out of his arms, and he's just sort of a stabilizing force in the multiverse. Now, we do mention him in the Monster Manual when we come to talking around about Slaads, because he had a hand. We say that now that he had a hand in their creation.
Right. Oh. Yeah, that was sort of a little bit of invented lore that came with 5th edition that's sort of cleaned up and explained some of the stuff going on with the Slaad. So,
nice. Well, good thing we'll be talking about Slaad on another segment of Lore You Should Know coming very soon.
But other than being this immensely powerful, godlike being that lives in Mechanus, Primus hasn't really been showcased anywhere, just name-dropped occasionally.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the band. Of the
just goddamn it.
Nirvana, Primus.
Because he sucks.
Exactly.
Primus sucks.
He kind of looked a little goofy back then too. So
yeah, they have all these. There's a whole bunch of the images of the higher level Modrons, and they have bizarre sort of big dome heads that kind of flare out, and then big long sort
of like protrusions,
face chins.
Yeah.
And they all kind of have that, and Primus is kind of the prime example of that. It's very strange.
We actually tried to reinvent Primus's look with 5th edition. We actually put some concept art time behind it, but none of the things we came up with really resonated, so we abandoned the idea.
But there's been only one.
Only one.
And he's an
immortal being who's been there as long as it's been there.
I mean, in theory, if you killed Primus, I think there'd just be another Modron that would get elevated.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, exactly. There are like 2 Secundus Modrons waiting for him to fall off a cliff.
We're gonna go. We're gonna go.
4, I think, is actually the.
Okay.
Well, and then how? So how do we know he's been the only one? Maybe there's been several that have been elevated.
Possibly, but there's only ever one at a time.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But there may be Primus the first, Primus the second, Primus the third.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he is a being of utter order, and so is the plane. The plane of Mechanus is everything is in clockwork order there. Maintenance problems are dealt with swiftly. It's without Primus and without the Modrons and without Mechonis kind of helping to stabilize the Great Wheel, it's quite likely it would just fly off its axle.
So
that the presence of lawful neutral is important to the balance of the wheel, just like every other alignment is important to the balance of the wheel. So he is providing a valuable service to the existence of the cosmos in his own way. We just can't really fathom what it is because he's a god and we're not.
And it's just super weird and alien. I mean, the plane itself is very strange, as many of the planes of the outer planes are. I mean, it's basically an infinite machine of massive gears, sometimes the size of continents that are spinning around in some sort of dark void space, and they're all interacting with one another in some
Presumably
giant...
doing something.
Turning around and who knows what.
Turning the wheel itself.
Yeah,
That's
perhaps.
right. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right, and that's how I've always envisioned Modrons as being like this extension of this clockwork that is able to go into the material plane and kind of interact with it for some reason. Yeah.
Now, occasionally something goes wrong with a Modron, and it can happen to any Modron, and it gets a sense of awareness that its peers do not. There's not really any predictable rhyme or reason. It's an anomaly, and were it to be found, it would be destroyed. And like all Modrons, when it's destroyed, it just sort of disintegrates. But sometimes it gets away and finds itself on some far-flung plane. Maybe it was in the march and it got lost or got knocked off the march somehow and knocked out for 10 minutes, and then the march went by, and it's just like,
now
I don't know what to do now.
Yeah, my programming was follow the march, and now there's no march, and I don't know what to do.
Child found it and made it a pet, like E.T.
Exactly. So enter Pixar film here. But it can learn. It can surpass its programming in a way and become more than that. And it's called a rogue Modron because it can't really fit into the machine anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's crazy and murderous or anything like that.
It just means that it's not part of the hive mind anymore.
Exactly. It has been separated from the hive mind and then is now just forced to cope on its own.
Is that the point when you would think it would become sentient, or like are they sentient?
I think it's
as Modrons.
It could be. We don't really say, but one could argue that there is more to Modrons than their simple programming. It's just they've been trapped in a dead-end job, doing repetitive work and basically foregone any imagination or initiative. But forced to survive in the cruel multiverse by itself, it can delve into some reserve, something that Primus put into their being, where they can actually learn and develop and not be the 1-task, 2-task, 3-task Modron that they were conceived as.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I mean, I don't think we've never necessarily delved into it too much with stories, but I have to imagine that to Primus that is a frustrating feature. Like there's this great machine and it's just missing that one screw.
It's a Lego set with one piece missing. It's like, oh my god,
where did it go? Did it fall on the ground somewhere? Yeah. So is there? I mean, that could be a plot of a story too. That Primus is searching for his rogue Modron. That it was very important. That had something.
Yeah. I've often thought it'd be fun to and I haven't quite developed the idea, but like to have some sort of plot where in the way that sometimes devils influence some town or something like that, that somehow the town is turned to Modrons as their like law keepers, and that like, hilarity ensues because they've contacted some Modrons, these creatures of ultimate law, and the Modrons just don't get it, right? And so the strange laws are made and things have to happen. Like in Star Trek Next Generation when Will Wheaton falls in the flower patch.
Right, like there's no interpretation of laws allowed. It's just like you followed it, you get the sentence.
That's it. You stepped on the grass. You did.
Interesting. So, is there any other ideas of how to use them in your game? I know they were in not Curse of Strahd. They were in Out of the Abyss as like some Modrons.
There were stray Modrons there that had broken off from a march and become stranded in the Underdark with a Modron leader who is trying to keep a stiff upper lip. Modrons appeared briefly in Tomb of Annihilation. There's a part of the tomb where the traps are basically maintained with the help of a device called the Mechonis chain. And if you disrupt that activity, Modrons can come out of a vortex and attack you because they still feel connected to that piece of their plane. but they're just sort of like a surprise. Oh my God, Modrons, where'd they come from?
Yeah, right.
And then you deal with them and you fly away. But they haven't. We'll try to insert them in any way we can where it makes sense. I think they could make cute companions, frustrating companions at times.
It's a way to add like a bit of madness, even though
little bit,
though they're law based. The fact that they're so
Quirky,
strange,
Yeah.
and alien, as you said, that like you're like, this is a world that has its own goings on, and it's a way to add that into a campaign.
They just sort of have a sort of a carriage of whimsy about them. So I think if your campaign can withstand it, the little bit of whimsy can just remind players that it's not all serious, fighting dragons and killing people and taking their money.
Sometimes it's frustrated chasing after Modrons that are doing something that you told them to do, but they're doing it again and again and again and again.
Yeah,
they won't stop.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. What about setting something on Mechanus itself, or using some of the lore that we would do here? Is there some plot there that you could tease at?
Well, it could be that you have to take something from Mechanus, like maybe you live in a town where long ago a wizard built kind of like a clock tower or something like that, and it's broken, and you find out that one of the pieces that you need to repair it you can only get from Mechanus. So you have to sneak in, take a gear from a Mechanus machine, knowing that it's going to shut down and all the Modrons are going to come out to try to find out what the problem is, and then get the heck out. That's certainly a plot line that's possible.
Yeah,
I certainly could see something like, some evil artifact of chaos or something like that you need to destroy, and go crush it between the gears of Mechanus, right? And you have to go to find some great, giant, massive, continent-shaped gear and shove that thing in there and hope that it doesn't throw the whole thing out of whack.
Right. Right. Use the predictability of the Modrons and how they work to your advantage.
Anytime that you've got sort of clockwork gears in your campaign, you can probably insert something to do with Modrons. Like in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, there's a magic item called the Clockwork Amulet, which is a simple device that contains little gears from Mechanus that basically allows you to choose a 10 instead of rolling on a die, on a 20-sided die. So you can get an average result. It's a predictable average result.
Yeah.
But maybe, you'll run into some Modrons, and one of the Modrons will hear this clicking whirring of this thing and kind of fall in love with it and just follow you around because you've got this device.
Right.
And he just likes the sound of it.
You were like another tier up.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was made out of his dad or something.
The boss that told him everything.
They don't have dads, but
yeah, right.
The
person that created him, or the factory that created him. Interesting.
Yes. It could also be that you have a mechanical construct that was built using some of the same technology that maybe was stolen or learned from how they build these things in Mechanus, and so you can create new Modrons or new types or new Modron kin kind of dealies.
Beyond the different casts, just the kind of last thing I want to touch on before we close this out, is there anything different between the monodrones, the duodrones, and the tridrones? Do you want to talk about that at all before we get out of here?
They change shape.
Yep, and they have varying capabilities and stuff like that.
Most Modrons have true sight, which allows them to see invisible stuff and things like that. But they become progressively tougher as they get up. When you get more sides, I guess you get tougher.
It's like an extra hits dice with each side on you.
But sometimes they lose things too, like monodrones, which are the lowest form. They have little wings and they can fly. If they were promoted to duodrones, they no longer have their wings. Their wings go away, and because they don't need it for whatever jobs that they're tasked with doing.
Right.
So there's structural changes to them and things like that. But they're all basically just cute little geometric critters. Or not little in some cases, some are big.
Or not cute. One of the notes I wrote up for when I was writing sort of the base of
if the starfish thing came at me, I'd be scared.
Yeah, right? That's the one I keep looking at.
Yeah. When I was writing some of the text that went into inform that monster manual entry, one of the things I wrote was that they were selfless sociopaths because they don't care about themselves or
others.
Right.
They just do what they're told, so they're kind of creepy.
What are morals? What are ethics?
And in some of the ways, they just want to do the thing the most efficient way possible, right? So if that means cutting down the person in front of them, it doesn't matter because I'm just doing my job better.
Yes. This party member is sick and dying. Now we can keep going.
Yeah. It is no longer a drain on our resources.
We have saved resources.
Yeah.
Don't waste that potion of healing.
All right, so now everybody make a party of Modrons to play as.
Of sociopathic Modrons. There you
What
go.
a fun game.
Right, yes.
All right, thanks, you guys. If people have any questions about Modrons, mechanics, whether Primus is a good band or not, how should they get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter at Chris Perkins DND.
And I am on Twitter at Cernett, SERNETT.
Awesome. And I am at Greg Tito, GREGTITO. I'm not sure why I spelled it, but I did this time.
Yeah, that's good.
Because we're trying new things in 2018.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys for that little bit on Modrons for this lore you should know. We'll be back next week with some more fun lore. Thanks. All right. We got 24 minutes to do Slaad.
We can totally do Slaad.
Yeah,
We can do Slaads. Let's do it. How are you guys doing in chat? Sorry we haven't been doing this, but we got to get the lore down and on the recordings before we lose these fine gentlemen to all the other amazing fun stuff that they're doing today. Like so many things.
So many things.
So many things.
So much writing.
Oh, Lauren says that his 3-to-1 contact shirt makes her happy.
Oh, yes.
And as it did me as I sent it.
3-2-1
And I was almost like, oh, you picked it perfectly for this talk on Modrons. Feels very mechanical. There's a new 3-to-1 contact out. Do you know?
What?
Yeah. My kids started watching it just a couple weeks ago. And have you ever seen The Good Place, that show The Good Place?
No.
Well, there's an actor who's on that, who's on 3-to-1 contact.
Oh,
I'm like,
I'll check it out.
Combining of worlds. You ready? You recording? I
Yep.
heard the beats. All right, good. Welcome to another segment of Dragon Talk.
No.
Take 2.
Welcome to another segment of Lore You Should Know. I am Greg Tito, and I am joined by these two fantastic lore masters, Mr. Chris Perkins.
Howdy.
And Matt Cernett.
Hi.
And we are going to, as we do with every one of these segments, talk about little bits of Dungeons & Dragons lore and delve in deep in getting at the heart of it, and then give you maybe some ideas for how to use it in your game and or just because it's fun. And today, we're going to talk about the chaotic side of things with the Slaad. That is how you pronounce it, right? Slaad?
Singular Slaad, plural Slaadi.
Slaadi.
Yep.
That
Slaadi.
sounds Scottish in a way.
Little bit.
Yeah. We'll get Richard in here to help us with that. So what are Slaad? Are they're gross, if I remember correctly.
No.
They're really slimy.
So they are chaotic neutral creatures from the outer plane of Pandemonium that are shaped, for whatever reason, like giant frog monsters or toad monsters. They basically look like huge, hulking, bipedal frog creatures.
Limbo.
Limbo, sorry. Did I say Pandemonium?
Yes.
Limbo.
Yeah.
Yes,
Did
Limbo.
that get changed?
The other
Limbo. No, that was
it's-
it was always Limbo. I was wrong.
Other chaotic plane.
Yeah.
But there's just so many chaotic planes out there. That's part of why they're chaotic.
Yeah, what else do we know about Slaad?
So
Slaadi.
Limbo is a plane of like just utter chaos. So like it's just a big soup of fire that turns into water, that turns into lightning, that turns into a fish, that turns into ice, that turns into a tree, that turns into rocks. It's blah, like it's just stuff happening.
There's like almost no real reality
Yeah.
happening, right?
Right.
And then certain beings, like for example the Githzerai, can sort of impose their will upon Limbo to create stable realities within it. Slaadi kind of just swim through the soup, and they are kind of gifted with the ability to exist in this plane regardless. And
They don't care if it's a tree or a balloon or yeah.
And
Do they stay as the same?
they are weird frog people. So one of the things that we thought about when we were doing 5th edition was, why are these weird frog people that they're in this plane of chaos? Like they're sort of like these angels of chaos, and yet they all look like weird frog people. And then they also have these really sort of law-abiding elements, like red Slaad make more Slaads by impregnating people with their claws, and making them
Injecting a pellet into their body, basically.
that grows and that turns into another blue Slaad pop out.
Yeah, they
I think.
Kind of like the chest burster
Yeah.
from,
yes, exactly.
from Alien.
It's exactly like the chest burster from Alien, but you give birth to a blue Slaad, so Yeah.
The blues don't do that. They change you by clawing you, then you transform into the other one, and then the other ones. They have all these rules that they follow.
Right, and even the fact that there's red and blue,
Right.
it has like a caste system, which is very
little,
law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so originally there was this thing like the Slotty Stone or something
The
like
Spawning Stone.
Spawning Stone,
Yeah.
something like that. And we, in the process of developing 5th edition, said, hey, where'd that thing come from? And our idea basically was Primus thought to impose some element of lawfulness in Limbo. And so Primus generated that. And essentially Primus created the Slotty race.
Oh.
Yes.
So
He had a grand scheme. Now, Primus, as we've talked about in a previous entry of this show, is the overlord, overgod of Mechonis and the Modrons, and has a sense of absolute order. And
right, and they're
Limbo,
lawful neutral.
lawful neutral. So Limbo would kind of chafe at him. He'd try to impose some order. And so this giant spindle-shaped rock stone was basically dropped into Limbo as a way for him to bring some order to the chaos.
It's like an order bomb, just being like,
Yep.
here you go. Just by
Exactly.
this mere presence of this thing, it will impose some order.
So now, Slotty, were they in Fiendfolio?
They were.
Okay, good. Got it right
Yes.
this time.
Created by the author Charlie Strauss.
And for what reason? Do you know? What was his inspiration?
Freelance gig. Money.
He
I
wanted to
assume.
get some frog people out in the world somehow.
He gave us both the Slotty and the Githyanki and the Gazari.
Oh,
So
interesting.
The Gith races and Slotty were from Charlie.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things that happens is that they're there in 1st edition, they get used and so on and so forth, and then in 2nd edition a weird switch happens where, and I'm not sure it was a conscious switch on the part of designers or not, but the descriptions for them in the Monster Manual 2 or the Outer Plane Appendix or whichever it was in 2nd edition, where the Slotty were first described, it didn't describe them the same way that it did in 1st edition. 1st edition is very clear. It says they have these marks in their head that mark rank or gems in their head or something like that,
Gems, yeah.
and then they have different colors. And in 1st edition, that got changed to the marks in their head just to signify rank and color. And so you'll see in like Planescape depictions, all the Slaad look the same. They're just a green frog, and it's because there was a decision with Planescape then that, it's just the gem in the head that tells you what color they are. Otherwise, they're all the same. So it was even more like all the Slaad look alike and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then that kind of got flipped again back in 3rd, where we're like, no, the color thing makes sense.
And we actually introduced even more colors in 3rd.
Yeah.
Then we got white Slaads and gold Slaads and black Slaads. And
Oh, God.
Slaads, every color. It's the same.
It's a
thing
rainbow of
happens with dragons.
Slaads.
If there's a color out there must be a Slaad to match it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so the spawning stone, when it spits out a Slaad, it implants a gemstone in its skull. And the gemstone is a certain color related to the Slaad, and the Slaad is happy that it's there. But a smart wizard or other creature can learn or find a way to extract that gem and then gain control over that Slaad.
Okay, so by holding the slot, you know, you have...
You have a piece of its brain, basically, and it will now do whatever you tell it to until it gets that piece back, and then it will rip you to pieces.
Interesting. All right, so that's how they ended up as servants for evil mages and that
They're
kind of thing.
interesting monsters because I believe we call them fiends here. No, they're aberrations. Interesting. They are outer planar creatures that are neither devils nor demons, and they're not evil. So they kind of give you a different flavor of thug to use in your game.
Because they just want to mess stuff up. They just want to live and
They just kind of follow their heart, baby.
Yeah.
They don't really care about anything or structure or laws or anything of that nature. And they have no ethical moorings of any kind.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine that they just sort of spread and attack things and do stuff just for the hell of it, as opposed to having any sort of real plan. Although some of the most powerful and most intelligent Slotty do seem to have more of a personality.
All the way back to their founding in 1st edition, there's the concept of the Slaad Lord, which is a super powerful Slaad that is created that can have more of an agenda and more of a plan. And there were a few of those who were introduced by name. One of them was Igorl, Another was Sendam, which was the word madness spelled backward.
Clever.
Yeah.
That
And
makes sense.
another one that I'm familiar with is has shown up in an adventure or two is Bassam Gorac. He's a two-headed Slaad.
Oh, is that common?
No.
But I mean, they're Slaad, so who knows?
Everything's chaos, right?
Exactly.
So when they come
more
out
chaotic
of limbo into our plane, how do they do that? Is it through vortexes and things like the Modrons?
the same way that any other planar creature can find its way in, it can be summoned by a powerful wizard or whatever.
Yeah.
Or blunder through a gate that is open at just the right time where it happens to be there and it can step through. Those tend to be the ways that it will get through.
Yeah. Do they lose any power when they come out of there, or is it just
Nope, they have all their goods.
Yeah.
And there's no telling what they'll do because they're not evil, they're not malicious, they're not attacking or hurting necessarily because they don't like you. It's just something to do, and they might break off an attack midway and just go, "Oh, ice cream," and wander over there.
So it's almost hard as a as a human brain.
They're like the worst boss you've ever had.
Yeah, it's like there's no rhyme or reason to anything. And
Right. You can't predict what they're going to do 5 minutes from now.
Yeah.
You can't even. The evil creatures, at least you could predict they're going to be mean to you. They're going to bully you.
They're going to be
With the-
self-serving.
Yeah, exactly. But with a Slaad, you just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, is it going to attack and eat the cow, or ride the cow, or ignore the cow? Like, is it going to moo like the cow? What is it going to do?
Maybe it is the cow. The whole time it's been a cow.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you're thinking about using Slaadi in your adventures, how would you introduce them and or have them be used?
So in Tomb of Annihilation, there is a Slaadi that's basically been bound to a tomb as a guardian. But its control gem is nearby. If you can find the control gem, hey, you have a Slaadi that can follow you around through the rest of the dungeon and will obey your commands. So that's one common way, is they can just be used as guardians, trapped or bound there or whatever. And they'll just fight whatever shows up because they're bored.
Yeah.
I think the idea of the control gem is an important part of their character and persona. So if you're going to deal with Slaadi, you should think about where their control gems are. Are they still in their skulls? Has somebody extracted it, and thus you can use it and use the Slaadi in some way as an instrument of Armageddon? And I think another cool adventure that has used Slaadi is an old dungeon adventure from issue, I want to say 41. Maybe. I think that's right.
That's really old.
It's really old. Called
Everybody in chat is just like, no way, dude, it's 42.
It might actually, no, it's not 41. It's whatever. One of the early issues. And it's called Jacob's Well, where the heroes show up in a snowbound fort. And because the weather's so bad, they have to camp there for the night. And that night, they find everybody. There's like 6 other people living there or whatever. And one of them, they find dead out in a barn somewhere with his chest exploded open. And there's a mystery involved. Why did his chest explode? And then you realize, oh, this is basically Alien in D&D. And you have to find the thing that burst out of him before it grows into a full-size Slaad and murders you all.
Yeah, interesting.
I ran that adventure, and I think it ended with the player characters trapping everybody in like a basement or a cellar and setting the building on fire.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to go.
I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
You're all going in the basement.
Well, and then even just the fact that it's in a winter thing makes me think of the Thing too, of like
Yes.
you don't know who someone else impregnated
Yes.
it that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Well, and even if you have like a controlled Slaad, say you have control over a red Slaad and can tell it what to do, if that thing attacks somebody else, it's going to leave a pellet in that other person that could grow into a Slaad that you don't have control of. So then you've got a problem on your hands.
Yes.
So, well, that's a mechanical thing. Then. So if the blue creates this and it bursts out, or a blue comes out, does it have a control gem on it when it bursts out?
Yeah, they sort of are born, created, whatever you want to call it, transformed with that intact to them. So
Okay.
yeah,
it's just part of their spawning process that they have this be a big part of it. Now, what about the different powers of each of them? Like, is that what do red Slaad do? What do blue Slaad do? What do the gold and white, as you said? Is it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't really do gold and white.
That's fine.
It's too many colors.
Issue 43.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
43.
Dungeon 43.
That's pretty darn close, though.
Yep.
Yes. So sort of the lower order ones, like the blue and the red, are mainly just sort of melee brutes.
Grunts.
But the green and the gray and the death, they all have various spellcasting abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Death Slaad can do fear and fireball and fly and cloud kill and plane shift and all kinds of crazy stuff.
The other thing that the higher level ones can do also is change their form so that they look like people.
Right.
That's even creepier.
Yeah.
Which I just have to, I can't imagine it would actually be able to pull off. I am a people. I'm
It'd be like Vincent D'Onofrio in Men in Black.
That's right. Yeah. Everything's fine here.
Moo. He's wearing an Edgar suit. An Edgar suit.
That guy walking down the street, kind of funny.
Yeah.
We had some. They have regeneration, many of them. We had some. The artist had some fun with the depictions of the Slaadi in the 5th edition Monster Manual. The green one's got a little monkey on his shoulder.
That's pretty interesting.
Because why not?
Yeah.
You're chaotic.
They don't.
If a monkey shows up, you might just be fine with that.
Well, the green ones are, I think, made from blues by when they infect a spellcaster.
That's right.
And so that's how you sort of get the higher order ones, is when they get a spellcaster and infect a spellcaster, and that transforms a spellcaster. So then the higher order now has spellcasting ability. So then when they go and infect people, then they create. It's weird.
Oh, that is interesting. All right, so and is that like part of? I was trying to think of like what a meta plot would be for Slaadi of the higher orders would be to like just infect as many, So that's why they could target adventurers. They target powerful people.
Hogwarts is going to be effed up.
Yep.
They got enough reptiles problems there, and then there's even more. That's interesting. So there's just like this element of chaos that you can add, and you never know what's going to happen, even if it's just a random encounter with these creatures. If you find the eggs, do any of them hatch from eggs?
No.
They're just from other people.
Yeah.
They have weird ways of transforming. Like a gray Slaad turns into a Death Slaad by eating a Death Slaad's corpse. Like they've all got a strange way of transformation or creating another of their kind. Another interesting plot point is, or a plot idea is, a Slaad comes rampaging in, murders a bunch of people, and you kill it, and it's missing its gem. And the question is, well, who sent it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then so the mystery becomes, who is the murderer behind the murderer? And if you can track the gem to its source, you might be able to identify who unleashed the Slaad and why.
Yeah.
And you get to their house, and it's just falling down. It's on fire, and there's hundreds of Slaadi pouring out of it.
More and more. Oops. This is planned all along.
Yeah.
Now, does the Slaad who you have the control gem for, it can't do anything else but what you order it to do?
So it does what you want it to do, but if you don't tell it not to kill that,
right,
that farmer, it might kill that farmer.
Yeah.
You have to be specific. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't just stand there and wait orders. It will behave as it will behave, doing whatever it's told to when it has to.
Right. So that's what I'm thinking. That in that scenario that you like, maybe you just wanted to
So
kill
you
all
want to
those
be very
people.
careful when you're dealing with it. You want to say, sit in that corner and don't move until I give you another instruction.
Yeah.
Then it's got to be like,
But I'm an agent of chaos. I want to change color and do
then he's like
things.
using his nails to dig holes in your wall.
Put little pellets of
Yeah.
Now, does it have to be people? That's actually an
Yeah.
interesting question. Does it have to be people that get the pellets, or can I put it in rats? Can it be put in?
In fifth edition-
It's 5th edition. It's a humanoid creature.
Yeah, it does have to be people in 5th edition. I'm not sure about previous editions. I don't know for
I'm not sure we were ever that careful with
certain.
the rules back then.
Yeah.
Because you think that all you need is one slot in any area, and then all of a sudden,
But a Slaad born out of a pigeon, I'm just not sure.
Yeah. That goes back to in 3rd edition. My favorite thing was the infinite shadows, because a shadow that kills a creature becomes a shadow.
Yeah.
And so just the shadow going through a forest is killing bugs. And
Made a shadow out of that bug.
oh man, I hate to get bit by bug shadows.
Yeah.
let's see.
Very interesting. All right, so if people have any other questions about Slaadi, how can they get in touch with you guys?
I am on Twitter at Chris Perkins DND.
I am also on Twitter at Cernett, SERNETT.
I am also on Twitter at not at those places, but at Greg Tito. And Matt, I feel is furiously looking up more stuff about Slaad. So
I was just trying to see if it made up if there was any rules on what it could infect, and I do not see any rules.
All right, so a clever DM
original,
would be able to
original.
use it in infecting dogs and cats.
That's right. Yeah.
Mass hysteria. As
Mass
they say.
hysteria. Indeed. Indeed.
All right, thank you guys. We'll have another lore you should know and or stage advice next week. Thank you. Talk on the Twitch for 2 seconds. So we are going to take a short break right about now. Those of you who were subscribed, thank you so much. You won't watch any ads that we're about to roll, but you also will get some fun emotes too to do that too. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes with an interview with Bill Benham and Greg Marks and the return of Shelley Mazanoble to this here table. We'll see you guys in a little bit.
Shelley Mazanoble.